Hey everybody, John here. Welcome back to Catbird Hill. So, this is a story of composting gone totally wrong. So, what I'm doing here is I'm pulling out of this garden. This was actually once a beautiful ornamental garden that we built next to our garage. It still has a lot of great stuff in it. But what I'm doing now is pulling out globs and globs of one of the nastiest invasive plants that we have here on Catbird Hill, which is Japanese stilt grass. And that's what I'm pulling out right now. I'll try to get a strand of this to show you what this looks like. It's a very thin grass. It's actually, at this time of the year in the fall, it actually turns kind of a pretty yellowish, almost burgundy color on some of the leaves. But here's the real problem. That's the seed head. So we are coming up in the middle of October here in southeastern Pennsylvania, and this is the time of the year when Japanese stilt grass starts to go to seed. And as you can see here, I'm just crumbling. These are the seeds that come off of that seed head, and you can see just one strand of grass produces a tremendous amount of seeds. Multiply that by lots of strands of grass and you can see why this stuff can easily take over a garden. So this particular area of our garden is full of this stuff, but it wasn't. About 10 to 15 years ago when we built this garden, we never had any stilt grass here. How in heaven's name did it get here? Because we had stilt grass on the property, but it was never in this garden. This is a garden that we very heavily mulched over the years as we were adding to it and cultivating it, mulching it basically with compost that we made here on the property. And that compost was largely pulled from an area where we were dumping leaves from just years and years of picking up leaves on the property and letting them kind of compost down. And you know, the composted leaves were awesome. You know, they typically kept out weeds. Stuff grew really well as we were adding this compost to not only this garden area but others on the property. But all of a sudden, in the last maybe 5 years, we started to see the stilt grass exploding everywhere that we had put the compost. And I finally figured out why. So we're going to take a little trip to another part of the property and we'll show you exactly what happened. We did a little bit of detective work and we figured out why all that great compost actually caused all of the problems that we're dealing with now, not only here, but in a lot of garden areas where we were composting heavily. Stay tuned. Oh, what a mess. I am kneeling in the middle, pretty much in the middle of an area where we had been dumping leaves from years of collecting leaves every fall, typically starting, maybe mid to late October, pretty much through November, even into early December. I was running a track vac behind our lawnmower and we were collecting an enormous amount of leaves. The track vac, I believe, if I remember right, the actual bin held about 25 bushels. And so we would drive around with the mower, vacuuming up all these leaves, turning them into this, finely mulched leaf material, and I would dump all of these mulched leaves into this space where I am now. And this space historically was what was called the mill race. Where we are now is a depressed, kind of hollowed out area. I'll try to give you some perspective. Up there is where we were. That's kind of through the trees here was our garage, and we were a little bit to the left. And you can see, if you walk down, you're descending a slope, and then there's a big step off, and you're in this valley here, which you can see maybe a little bit more clearly if you look here. You can kind of see the drop off of the land into this space, and this is all hollowed out. This is what carried water from our creek. This is 150 years ago, carried water from the creek. There was a dam all the way in the back, which we've shown in previous videos, but that dam diverted water through here, and this actually went all the way through to the front of our property. You can kind of see it a little bit here. We'll sort of narrow the focus a little bit. Draw the camera in a little bit further. And so, the mill race just kept going through here and ultimately dumped that water into the bottom of the water wheel that ran the grist mill. Not our grist mill, it wasn't here when we arrived, but that grist mill that water wheel is what turned the grinding stones in the grist mill and made grain. So this area was just kind of a natural depository for leaves that we wanted to turn into compost over time. So as I mentioned earlier, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, this area had virtually no weeds. This is all stilt grass pretty much. So what we were doing is we were digging out the composted leaves. Anything time that we were working on a garden, we would just excavate this area. I'll try to pull up some stuff that resembles the leaf compost that we were making. It was very simple and low energy expenditure composting. So this is, I think you can probably see this. This is what we were making. Okay, this is the compost that resulted from years of dumping leaves here, and it's unbelievable. It's just almost black. It's absolutely the best compost that we've ever made, and just nature made it. We dumped it and let it sit here, and then a year or two later we would dig out whatever we needed and we would put it on the gardens. What we did not realize, or what I certainly didn't realize, is that we were also discharging into the mill race stilt grass. So what would happen is, as we were cutting the grass near the edge of the mill race, and you can see I've actually used the weed whacker here to cut some grass, but all up in this area was stilt grass. It's been mowed obviously now, but I was not thinking, and I was just discharging the cut stilt grass, generally at this time of the year when the stilt grass seed was drying out and it was falling off the stems. I was discharging that with the mower into the mill race where we were just standing, right down in this area. So all along here, from there until, gosh, probably another, I'd say 100 feet down that way, That's where we were dumping the leaves, and then I was, over time, as the stilt grass kept infiltrating our lawn and I would cut it, I was discharging it into that space, and we ended up with what we have today, which is a stilt grass farm. Unknown to me, however, in the maybe 3-4 years ago or 5 years ago, I was cutting the grass, shooting the seeds in there, and later in that season, or maybe in the spring, before the stilt grass seed would germinate, I was taking the compost and then I was transporting it and distributing it to multiple areas in our garden. So that's how I turned composting into a disaster. Lesson learned, believe me, big time. That was not our intent, and I certainly wish I could turn back the clock and think more clearly about what I was doing back then that ultimately led to this mess that we're dealing with now. So we've got a mess on our hands. The way that I'm going to have to deal with that is we're pretty much going to have to blow up that garden. By that I mean I'm probably going to, in the springtime, dig out the stuff that I want to save. We have some really nice ornamental plants in there and some small shrubs. I'm going to dig them out, probably put them into a little bit of a nursery holding area. I'm going to let the weeds and primarily the stilt grass germinate, and then I'm going to just hit it with an herbicide. Let it die down. I won't get all of it. Some more will germinate. I'll hit it again, and then we're probably going to start to reestablish that garden. So through the course of next year, we're going to be rebuilding that garden. But it's what happens when I did not think about what I was doing. I did not think ahead and really understand I'm discharging this invasive weed seed all over our compost area. So I think, the other lesson here is if you really want to keep your compost clean, you have to have a dedicated area for it. Now, maybe in a more controlled yard environment, maybe in a suburb where you have you don't have as much of an expanse of land next to you, where I've got farmland next to me, on basically all around me, and the wind's blowing weed seeds everywhere. You might have a little easier way of controlling it, but what I'm going to have to do here is basically build compost bins that are enclosed on 3 sides so that I can minimize stuff getting in there that I don't want to have in there. Of course, that's an opportunity to do another big woodworking project, which I'm always glad to do, but it's something that I wish I had thought of ahead of time. So just wanted to share that with you, that if you have a newly acquired country property, be very, very careful about where you're sourcing your compost, because you may actually be just creating almost like an incubator for a lot of your invasive plants to just thrive in the gardens, and you don't really want that to happen at all. Trust me, it is you'll create a lot of work, unnecessary work for yourself. So hopefully, some people out there can benefit from this information I'm just sharing with you. I'm kicking myself. I should have known better. I've got all this training in horticulture and land management, but this is something where I just was not thinking. So hopefully that information share can be helpful for someone out there. Thanks so much for watching. A little bit of a different topic on the video today, but I think it's going to be useful for somebody. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe and share the videos with your friends who you think might be interested. Give us a thumbs up. Make sure you hit the bell icon to get notifications when we upload videos. Until next time, John here from Catbird Hill, back to pulling weeds. Take care.